Josie Geller presents herself as a 17-year-old high school student at South Glen South High School. So why exactly did her English teacher, Mr. Coulson, think that it was perfectly appropriate to fall in love with his teenage student? Never Been Kissed stars a young Drew Barrymore as Josie Geller, a 25-year-old copy editor at the Chicago Sun-Times. Josie is super geeky and has been this way her entire life. It's even revealed that at the ripe age of 25, she has never kissed a guy before. When the Chicago Sun-Times editor-in-chief, Rick Furt, decides to do a piece in helping parents become more aware on what's going on in their teenagers' lives, he decides to send Josie back to high school as an undercover student, 21 Jump Street style. So even though Josie was a complete loser in high school the first time around, she is confident that the second time around will be totally different. But once she's enrolled at South Glen South High, she commits a major fashion faux pas by wearing an unflattering outfit, which makes her an immediate target for bullying. While there, she also ends up having many flashbacks to the ruthless bullying that she endured while she was actually in high school. Right away, Josie develops a bit of a crush on the most popular boy at South Glen South High named Guy Perkins, who greatly resembles her old high school crush, Billy Prince. The whole thing is a little weird because she's actually 25, but whatever. When Guy tries to speak to Josie in the cafeteria on her first day, she becomes flustered and starts rambling and ends up making a fool of herself in front of Guy, much to the amusement of three mean girls, Kirsten, Kristen, and Gibby. Guy ends up very rudely asking Josie if she's in special ed. The only friend that Josie ends up making is with a super sweet girl named Aldise, who is a fellow geek like herself. Aldise even talks Josie into joining the Denominators, which is a mathletes type of club. If Mean Girls had been out in 1999 instead of 2004, Josie would have known that joining the mathletes, as Regina George once put it, is social suicide. One night, Aldise and Josie drive by the popular kids' hangout called The Court, where underage drinking and promiscuity take place. Guy Perkins just so happens to see Aldise and Josie parked and decides to harass Aldise for having the nerve to be where the popular students hang out. After telling Aldise to leave, he follows up by yelling after her something along the lines of, she should go home and think about how many lifetimes it's going to take for her to get popular. There's clearly a theme running throughout this movie that popularity is everything. I actually think that Guy Perkins had a huge crush on Aldise, and why wouldn't he? She was super cute. He seemed to be obsessed with her and what she was doing. For someone who claims he did not like her, he spends a lot of the movie going out of his way to get her attention. I think that he was mad at himself for liking her, knowing good and well that his friends would have never approved because she was nothing more than a geek. Anyways, basically it ends up taking Josie less than a day to be labeled a total geek by her newfound peers. In fact, the only person aside from Aldise who seems to take an interest in Josie is Mr. Coulson, her super cute English teacher, but more on him and his super sketchy ways in just a moment. After Josie fails miserably at being popular, she risks getting fired from the Chicago Sun-Times along with her boss Gus if they don't find an interesting and entertaining scoop for Josie to write about. In an attempt to save both of their jobs, Gus provides Josie with a hidden camera that is to be worn at all times so that he can find her a story to report on. He tells her that she is to befriend the popular kids in school because they are where the story will be. Josie feels like there is no way she can become popular and confides in her 23-year-old brother Rob. Rob was super popular in high school and tries to give her some advice, but it's clear that Josie is not hearing him. Eager to help his sister become popular, Rob ends up enrolling himself in South Glen South High alongside Josie using a fake ID, which is totally illegal considering that he is not an undercover reporter. Rob also has some superficial reasons for wanting to enroll though. He hopes to relive his high school glory days of being a sports superstar by joining the baseball team. At first, Josie thinks that her brother is out of his mind to think that he can just become popular in one day, but that's exactly what he does. Rob becomes just as popular as Guy Perkins within a day. Rob uses his newfound popularity to bring Josie along for the ride, because as he states earlier in the film, all it takes is one person to like you and you're in. Rob pretends that he and Josie used to date, weird, and just like that, all the other guys in school are intrigued by her. After Rob makes Josie popular by association, she begins to ignore her friend Aldis, which obviously annoys Aldis. Josie eventually gets so popular that Guy Perkins ends up asking her to be his prom date. So in the midst of everything that's happening, Josie also gets the attention of her English teacher, Mr. Coulson, the attention of which she's had since day one. Mr. Coulson appears to be deeply impressed by Josie's intelligence. At one point in the film, he even asks her if she's sure she's only 17. But as the movie goes on, I can't help but to wonder, did he ask her this because of her smarts or because he was also attracted to her that early on? Maybe he wanted to check if she was at least 18. Mr. Coulson and Josie develop a close relationship, and he thinks that she is a talented writer and pushes her to pursue her writing while also pushing her to apply to colleges. He even sends out samples of her writing to prospective colleges without her knowledge. Now, helping her with her writing and college preparations can easily make him look like Teacher of the Year, but Mr. Coulson clearly has ulterior motives. It's almost like he's grooming Josie to become his perfect little girlfriend. And because Josie is devastatingly immature and too caught up in her own feelings and world, she seems oblivious to what he is doing and why it's wrong. At one point in the film, Mr. Coulson is at a dance club that all of his teenage students go to. Weird. While there, he runs into Josie and he introduces her to his girlfriend. His girlfriend is presented as being boring and kind of rude. His girlfriend is not impressed by the club or by Josie, and she's probably wondering why he is at a dance club with all of his teenage students. Later on in the movie, Josie and Mr. Coulson ride a Ferris wheel together at a school carnival. He weirdly confides in her about his relationship problems with his girlfriend. He tells her that he's not ready to commit to her. He then apologizes to Josie for telling her about his relationship woes, but Josie says that it's okay because it's nice to have someone to talk to. And literally out of nowhere, Mr. Coulson very inappropriately tells Josie that when she is his age, guys will be lined up around the block for her. Josie blushes, saying that he has to say that because he's her teacher. A switch seems to go off in his head at some point, and he replies, "Actually, I shouldn't say that because I'm your teacher." I feel like Mr. Coulson wanted Josie to know that he had feelings for her, and by saying that guys will be lining up the block for her was his way to let her know that he liked her. Mr. Coulson comes off as really immature, which is probably why his relationship with his age-appropriate girlfriend is struggling. And Josie is a really immature adult herself, which is probably one of the reasons that she and Mr. Coulson have chemistry. The whole thing is really creepy and inappropriate. Obviously, Mr. Coulson's romantic feelings towards Josie are wrong because he's older than her, and on top of it, he is her teacher. He is in a position of power over her. Even by having a crush on her, he is risking his position as an educator. Josie's all too obvious chemistry with Mr. Coulson turns out to be highly entertaining to Rickford, Gus, and the entire office, who decide to make him the story. They want to do a piece on student-teacher relationships, with Rickford asking, "How close is too close?" This mortifies Josie because she has genuine feelings for Mr. Coulson. By the end of the film, everything comes to an epic climax at the prom, where Rob has made prom court along with Josie, who unsurprisingly becomes prom queen. But when Josie's newfound popular friends attempt to humiliate Aldis by dumping dog food all over her, Josie can't bring herself to let this happen. It reminds her too much of when she herself was a victim of ruthless bullying in high school. Josie foils the popular kids' attempt to humiliate Aldis, and the dog food ends up getting all over Kirsten, Kristen, and Gibby, which causes rage in them. They declare that Josie really is a loser after all. But Josie is over all the drama and decides to confess that she is actually a 25-year-old news reporter for the Chicago Sun-Times. Josie's confession causes Mr. Coulson to walk out of the prom, maybe because he's scared for his career knowing that he was in love with his student, or maybe because he felt like he was being used as a pawn for a story. Either way, when he and Josie find each other outside, he says something along the lines of, why should he be happy to find out she's 25, asking if it's because suddenly he is allowed to be attracted to her after all. Josie is giddy about his confession of having been attracted to her the entire time, but the damage is done. He feels like he was duped and wants nothing to do with Josie. Instead of writing a piece on Mr. Coulson, Josie ends up putting both her career and Gus's career in jeopardy by taking a risk, and instead writing an article that puts herself on blast. She writes a deeply emotional story about her experiences in high school and how she was the biggest loser. She writes about how she's never kissed a guy before, and about her experience trying out high school for a second time. In the piece, she acknowledges that she hurt a man, aka Mr. Coulson, while working on her piece. She confesses that she is in love with Mr. Coulson, and that if he feels the same way, that he should meet her on the school's baseball field before a big game and give her her first real kiss. This is a happy ending romantic comedy, so he obliges, and Mr. Coulson and the newly revealed 25-year-old Josie appear to live happily ever after, with no one ever questioning anything that's happened. Never Been Kissed is a romantic comedy with strong themes of what it means to be popular, what it means to be yourself, and on the high school experience in general. I think that at some point everyone wonders what it would be like if they could get the chance to redo a part of their lives, whether it be high school or some other significant period of your life. There are obviously a lot of things in this movie that were acceptable to audiences at the time that probably wouldn't go over that well today, from the student-teacher relationship to sending a grown woman back to high school as an undercover student. But at the end of the day, this movie was a comedy with a heart of gold and a forever classic among romantic comedy lovers. In Never Been Kissed, Mr. Coulson knew that it was wrong that he had feelings for Josie. Luckily for him, she was actually 25. But his initial attraction to her makes him a total perv, based on the fact that he was under the impression she was only 17. So some final thoughts on the film. Is it just me, or is Guy Perkins not even that hot to be such an a-hole? And you know what? Billy Prince wasn't that hot either. Or maybe it was just their personalities that weren't that hot. Did I mention that I think Guy Perkins was totally in love with Aldis? He's the type of guy to hit her up on social media years after high school, trying to date her, knowing damn well that she's too good for him now, and he's probably the loser that he was destined to be. Was Rob arrested for posing as a student and taking a 16-year-old to the prom? Was Josie arrested for knowing that Rob enrolled in high school as a 23-year-old man? Was Mr. Coulson out of line for having feelings for his 17-year-old student? Or was it not that big of a deal that he had a crush on Josie, since he didn't necessarily make a move? Was Josie wrong for having a little crush on Guy Perkins, considering he was only a teenager? Or did he simply remind her of her old high school crush, and it was harmless? What are some other great chick flicks about student-teacher relationships or high school stories that you love? Drop them in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel.